All right. Good afternoon, everyone. We are live with the Marine Mammal Center and Sea Otter Savvy. We're so excited. You are in the right place for Retrofit, Rehabilitate, and Reintroduce. We're so excited to get into it today, talk a little bit more about sea otters and all of our connections that we have with these amazing marine mammals. And while we give it a couple minutes for folks to join in, I would love to hear where you're tuning in from today and how much you love sea otters. So go ahead and put in the comments where you're joining in from. We're so excited to have you all. You're in the right spot, and we're going to get started in just a couple of minutes. So we're gonna, as in the meantime, just drop a comment, drop a note, let us know where you're tuning in from today. So excited to talk about retrofit, rehabilitate, and reintroduction, all with the sea otters. We've got our experts from the Marine Mammal Center and Sea Otter Savvy. We're so excited to be with you today, kicking off Sea Otter Awareness Week. Hope everyone has had fun celebrations. There have been a lot of events going on to raise awareness about sea otters, and we're so excited. So I'm going to keep my eye here on the comments. Looks like we have Patricia joining from Vegas. Welcome in, Patricia. Hope that the weather has cooled off a little bit for you over in Vegas. Great to have you joining us to learn a little bit more about sea otters. Where else are people joining from this afternoon? You're in the right place for Retrofit, Rehabilitate, and Reintroduce with the Marine Mammal Center and Sea Otter Savvy. We're so excited to get into it. We've got Carrie from Concord who misses Marine Mammal Monday. Us too. That was such a fun program. Great to have you, Carrie. Welcome back. And we've got Crystal from Vancouver. Welcome in, Crystal. Rita from Santa Rosa. Oh, one of our Sea Otter Savvy volunteers. Hi, Rita. Amazing. We've got Andrea from Brentwood. Welcome, Andrea. Mitch, also from Vancouver. We've got some good representation from Vancouver this morning. Amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much. You can continue putting into the comments where you're tuning in from. We're so happy to have you. And I'm actually going to hand it over to Heather to give us a little introduction.
Thank you so much, Laura. Hi, everyone. My name is Heather. I'm the Sea Otter biologist. I'm the Science Communication Director for Sea Otter Savvy. And I just wanted to highlight today that this is Sea Otter Awareness Week, and it occurs every year during the last full week of September. And it is organized in partnership with Sea Otter Savvy, Defenders of Wildlife, California State Parks, the Laka Alliance, Monterey Bay Aquarium, and we thank all of our collaborators like the Marine Mammal Center that join us in spreading this awareness. And this year marks the 22nd year. So that's a lot of years. That's amazing. And this theme is Together We Thrive. And it's highlighting the interconnectedness of humans, sea otters, and the environment. And it encourages communities, organizations, and individuals to work together for a healthier, more sustainable future. And this week also highlights one of our programs, Sea Otter Savvy's We Were Here Sea Otter program, which educates communities and stakeholders who are missing sea otters, that are still missing them, and offers a survey for community involvement. So sea otters did once inhabit all along the Pacific coast. You're going to learn a lot more about that today in this discussion. They are ecologically and they are culturally significant. And there is increasing discussion regarding potential reintroduction to historical habitats. So to move forward, government agencies and the sea otter research community, we need to engage communities and stakeholders to hear their perspectives. So we want to hear from you. So if you're wondering what you can do today for Sea Otter Awareness Week, please take the Sea Otter survey and share your thoughts on possible reintroduction. Your voice really does matter, no matter where you're from. So the links, the website, and the survey will be made available to you at the end and will be posted with this video. And I think there's even a QR code. So if you needed to, you could also use your phone to get that right now. But thank you all. I'm so excited to be here and hear this talk. Have fun.
Thank you so much, Heather. That's so great. I'm so glad that so many wonderful organizations can come together for this week and raise awareness about the amazing sea otters. We've got that QR code for the survey up on the screen, so feel free to give that a scan. So thank you so much for kicking us off, Heather. We're really excited to be here to talk about the arguably most adorable marine mammal, and certainly the smallest of the marine mammals, the sea otters. And we'll definitely leave time at the end for any questions. So feel free to continue putting into the comments any questions that you have throughout the presentation, and we'll be sure to get to those at the end. And I, without further ado, would like to introduce the center's Director of Conservation Medicine, Dr. Cara Field, who's with us, and one of the guest Sea Otter researchers and Sea Otter Savvy intern, we have Samantha Hamilton. Thank you so much for both being here. And I'll turn it over to Cara and Samantha to introduce themselves, share a little bit more about how you do this amazing work with sea otters.
Great, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here with everyone today. Just amazing work from everybody protecting these little animals, these little furry, adorable yet super feisty and incredible little creatures. I'm a veterinarian and I've been taking care of sea otters for over 15 years, both in sea otters that in the wild, so our free-ranging little guys, and also sometimes under human care. Sometimes there are otters that don't survive, that may not be releasable back to the wild. And some facilities are able to provide them homes where they can live out their lives in peace and still have a good quality of life. So those experiences have been amazing and have taught me a lot about these little guys. I grew up on the coast of California, so I remember seeing them kind of few and far between when I was young. And nowadays, there are definitely more of them out there, but we definitely have not reached those historic levels, which we'll talk more about later. Samantha, how about you? A little introduction.
Thanks, Cara. Hi, everyone. Happy Sea Otter Awareness Week. My name is Samantha Hamilton, and I'm currently a research intern with Sea Otter Savvy. I'm also a recent master's graduate from Johns Hopkins University, where I study potential sea otter recovery in parts of the sea otter's historical range.
Such a pleasure to have you both. Thank you so much. And you may know, for our viewers, that at the Marine Mammal Center, we've rescued, rehabilitated, and released marine mammals for coming up to our 50-year anniversary, and over 25 years of work specifically with the sea otters. And we've actually on site had to retrofit some of our pens to accommodate longer-term care for this particular species. Cara, I'd love if you could tell us a little more about where sea otters stay when they come into care at the hospital.
Absolutely. So you wouldn't really know it from looking at them, but sea otters are extremely mischievous and extremely good at exploring their environment, and I want to say exploiting their weaknesses. So when we have 6 sea otters coming into care, they're usually, they're pretty out of it. They're tired, they're exhausted, they're usually really thin. They don't have a ton of energy, but when in rehabilitation we can get them through those first few days, or if they have to come into care for some other reason, like an oil spill, what we found collectively as sea otter caretakers is they will find if there is a weak link in their holding area, they will find it and exploit it. So they're actually quite good climbers, and they're very, very clever with their paws, and their little brains are very sharp. So we have to make sure that we provide an area for them that is safe, that they cannot destroy. That's one of the biggest challenges of all. That they are able to still have good water quality, because their fur is of the utmost importance in them, for them to keep warm and because they don't have blubber. So they're totally dependent on their fur and fur quality for health. So water quality needs to be really, really good. So as you can see in this picture, we've labeled some of the really important areas. So escape artist, first and foremost. So we humans have to be smarter than them. So we've got a very, very tall door with otter-proof locks, we think, and we hope. So far, so good. We've also put smooth boarding on the inside where it says anti-climbing walls, so that they can't get traction with those clever little paws. And then the grates, we actually have to tighten those grates down with extra force in comparison to our seals and sea lions, because otters they're quite strong with their little front paws too, so they can turn those nuts and bolts and unscrew them, tear out the grate, and of course we don't want any of those things, and we certainly don't want them to swallow something they shouldn't eat. So it is a lot, but they have to be able to get out of the pool more easily. They're not So we have the pool you can see there is flush basically with the ground. So all of these things contribute to being able to hold otters successfully. And even in short term, even otters that are not feeling well, we have to retrofit our little otter pens that are specialized for them so that we can do a combination, protect their fur, give them the food they need, allow them to eat in water if they're able to and interested, because that's natural for them, and also make sure that they get plenty of time and space to rest. So lots of tweaks to our normal procedures for holding sea otters.
Oh my gosh, never a dull moment when it comes to sea otters. And on top of all of this retrofitting of the pens for these little escape artists, I hear that they are picky eaters as well. Is that right?
Yes, indeed. And we already feed our animals that are in care, our seals and sea lions and everybody, restaurant quality food. But boy, sea otters are a whole nother picture. So in the wild, they have really kind of a varied diet. They eat a lot of different invertebrates, clam and mussel, worms, fat innkeeper worms, which I just like to say that word, urchins. They'll eat other kinds of snails and sometimes crab and different things. So, and of course, their prey, as they're grabbing it off the ocean floor, it's all live. So they are not super fond of our stored, frozen, and refrigerated food that we give them. You can see in that little photo and video that otter was happily eating, but it may have eaten clam that one time, and the next time we toss a bunch of clam in there, it might be like, no, I'm not eating that anymore. So literally, not just day to day, but feed to feed, we find them being extra picky. So we do have to be not just have really good quality food, but huge volumes of it, because they need, first of all, a lot of calories, and second of all, they tend to be a bit wasteful. So it pains us a little bit to see all that amazing seafood go to waste. But these animals are really special little creatures and are so important in the environment for the ecosystem, for helping maintain a healthy ecosystem. So we do everything we can to take care of them while we have them here.
Truly, and they eat better than I do with all of this restaurant
Me
quality,
too.
sustainable seafood. It's pretty amazing, and what big personalities too. I'm seeing some really great comments and questions come into the chat, so just want to encourage people to keep putting your questions in there. Promise we'll have time at the end for that. And Dr. Kara, can you tell us what sort of things we do to treat the sea otters when we bring them into the hospital, and how do you prepare them for release back to the wild?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different reasons we might have a sea otter that is injured or sick come into the hospital. Here in our southern sea otter population, the most common problems we see are protozoal disease, so toxoplasma and sarcocystis. And both of these are little protozoal parasites that they're definitive hosts, the animals that produce them in large numbers and poop them out are cats and opossums. So you may have heard of toxoplasma and associated with cats. So we all love our kitty cats, but this parasite, it runs through them, and then same with sarcocystis and opossums. So these parasites get into the runoff, and it enters that coastal environment, and then they kind of fall through the water column and get filtered by the same food that the sea otters eat. So the sea otters, unfortunately, as they're just eating food, they ingest a lot of these little protozoal parasites and get infected. So that's a big problem for these guys, because it does affect their brain in the same way that it can affect us humans and other animals, causing a lot of inflammation, tremors and shaking, and ultimately seizures and death in many cases. So it's a really major problem for sea otters and other coastal marine mammals, as well as ourselves. And it kind of shows that really important relationship between our lives here on soil, or terrestrial lives, and those in the water. We're so closely linked. Another big thing that we see in sea otters is cardiac disease and also kind of brain damage associated with a biotoxin. And this biotoxin called domoic acid is produced during harmful algal blooms. And we actually have that going on right now down in San Luis Obispo, where we're getting hundreds of stranded sea lions associated with this biotoxin. So it binds, this biotoxin is also called a neurotoxin because it binds to receptors in the brain and in the heart And similar to ingesting toxoplasma and sarcocystis, these little sea otters ingest the domoic acid along with their food, and they can get sick. And sometimes this causes disease immediately, and sometimes it just can kind of build up over time, in that it causes disease of the heart. And ultimately, these little guys who need a really good functioning brain and heart die of failure of heart or brain. So some really big challenges. And then lastly, also importantly, are shark bites. So most sharks do not actually want to eat sea otters. They're not very nutritionally substantial, to be perfectly honest. They're mostly hair. It's like eating a hairball. Not a ton of nutrition there. And so most of the bites that we see in sea otters are what we call test bites. So, but if you're a giant great white shark, 10 or 12 feet or something like that, and you've just got a little, like 60-pound or so sea otter, a test bite is going to be pretty damaging. So even though that's not the prey you wanted, it looked like it could be a seal, so you went after it. And the otter managed to fight you off. But unfortunately, those bites can be lethal. Days or weeks later, the otters can bleed out, or those bites can result in wounds that get infected. So a lot of different things, but those are three of the biggest problems that we're seeing in our southern sea otters right now.
That's pretty incredible that these sea otters are so resilient, even with these parasites, with shark bites. We're able to get them the rehabilitation and eventually release them back to the ocean where they belong and they play such an important role. And I'm curious what it's like to see that moment when they get released back to the wild after working so hard on their rehabilitation. What is that like for you?
That is one of the best feelings in the world. Aside from the fact that you help this individual animal, it's always our hope and our goal that they'll go back out there into the wild. They'll stay away from people, hopefully. We want to support them, but also strike a balance of not getting them used to us and seeing us as a beneficial thing in their lives. And as you can see in this awesome video, which I probably shouldn't talk through because it's pretty amazing to watch them go home. But fortunately, you can see that sea otter took one look at that person to the right and was like, nope, and went right back into the water. So that's the goal that we're hoping for. And we always hope and want to see these otters succeed after rehabilitation and go on and reproduce and live a normal sea otter life and contribute to the overall population. So that's always our goal and it can be a fine line between taking good care of them and making sure, like that little guy, that they are not seeing humans as a good thing in their lives ultimately. So that's what I love to see. It's always nice to feel a connection with them, but it's always better for them when they get to run off and just be normal wild sea otters again. So fantastic feeling.
Absolutely. Probably one of the most rewarding parts of the job, getting to see those patients return happy and healthy back to the ocean where they belong. Exactly. And in the past, we've seen too that sea otters were hunted extensively because of their luxurious, very dense fur. And that ultimately led to the dramatic decline in their population and the need for protection, and why we're doing all this effort. So, and they are listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act. So can you speak, either Dr. Cara or Samantha, a little bit more to why it's so important to protect the sea otters?
Yeah, Samantha, why don't you tell us a little bit about that so we can hear from you a little bit more?
Sure. So sea otters are actually a keystone species, which means that they are key to maintaining the health of their ecosystem that they live in. They have a disproportionately large effect on their environment relative to their abundance. So while their numbers may be small, their impact is very mighty. Purple sea urchins are voracious grazers that sweep across the ocean floor to feed on kelp. When sea otters munch on these small, spiky animals, they actually keep the urchin populations low enough for kelp forests to flourish.
And that's so important with so many species that rely on that kelp as well. So it really helps promote that healthy, interconnected ecosystem. And sea otters can be found from about Pigeon Point in San Mateo County to Point Conception in Santa Barbara County, the kind of typical range. But that's not always the case, right, Samantha?
That's right. And so a while back ago, you used to be able to see sea otters in a lot more places than you do today. And that's partly because of the fur trade that occurred about a century or so ago. Today, southern sea otters actually inhabit only 13% of their historical range. The current range, as you mentioned, is from Pigeon Point near Año Nuevo State Park down to Gaviota near Santa Barbara. But historically, southern sea otters could have been found in San Francisco Bay, and their historical range even continued along the Pacific coast to Alaska and all the way over to Japan and Russia.
Wow. And with such a large historical range, I'm sure now the impact of the lack of sea otters present along that range has a big implication on the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that we are really, really interested in as climate change advances and changes, because sea otters are super important ecosystem modulators, more so than I think we've ever really considered to be. How they, as Samantha said, they keep those urchin populations in check and really help balance out and support those really important kelp ecosystems that harbor hundreds of different kinds of species. So, and the giant kelp and different things are also really important producers of oxygen in the water. So really, otters have they're a keystone species that have a really important role. And recently, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which is charged with overseeing many different wildlife species, including the sea otter, has assessed whether or not it's actually feasible to reintroduce otters into some parts of their historic range. And with Fish and Wildlife, working with many, many different experts on sea otters, found that it is feasible. And another group in Oregon, based out of Oregon, the Alaka Alliance, did a similar study and found, yes, it is feasible to be able to reintroduce sea otters into parts of California and or in Oregon, because the benefit to the entire ecosystem, not just sea otters, outweighs the concerns in many ways. Of course, we all need everybody's input. It's been a long time since otters inhabited these areas. So people's concerns around what that might mean for different fisheries, especially, are of course very valid. But the benefit that we could gain from this, and this would not be something that just happened in like, oh my gosh, we went from 0 to 500 in a year. That's just not something that's going to happen with this really limited population as it is. But the ability to rebuild the presence of sea otters can have a really, really important ecological effect that could benefit all of us that rely on this environment.
That's amazing. And luckily, we have Samantha on the call with us here today to tell us more specifically about that research that she's conducting for potential sea otter reintroduction. Samantha, can you tell us a little bit more about that work?
Of course. So in a study conducted by me and a team of scientists, we all worked together to collect data and develop a powerful model to predict what sea otter recovery could look like in areas where sea otters historically lived. So that means that in the data collection step of this project, data about sea otter prey items like crabs and clams were gathered through surveys, and habitat data was actually collected through images captured by drones. In the second step, those prey and habitat data that were collected were inputted into mathematical equations that can actually describe how sea otters interact with their environment. So together, those equations are called models, and we can use software like R to help run and even adjust them. And in the third step of this study, we use the models that we created to then predict what a future sea otter population might look like in an area that doesn't currently have any otters.
So even potentially in places like San Francisco Bay, we could model and see what that might look like for a sea otter reintroduction. And I'm curious, Dr. Cara, what that would mean with the center in our role. What kind of part would we play with that?
Yeah, we've been talking about that for quite a few years now. We've responded to stranded and injured sea otters for decades, as they do overlap part of our range. So the center covers all the way stranded marine mammals from San Luis Obispo County all the way up to Mendocino County. So that overlaps very solidly with current and hopefully future sea otter range. So over the last few years, especially when these feasibility studies started, we've been a part of that process so that we can understand what role we may have. And that would include responding, of course, to sea otters that look like they're in distress, but also taking observational information, just documenting where are those otters? What are they maybe doing? Are they foraging? Do they look like they need an issue or anything like that? And we can also serve as a holding facility, either for otters that may be released back out into the environment, or if otters look like they're not doing well and they needed to come back into care for a certain amount of time, we can also play that role in holding them here again, treating them if needed. So we have a lot of different hats that we can play with sea otter reintroduction efforts. And certainly as a primary responder for this whole area, that will be, and rehabilitation center, those will be our primary roles for otters. But this incredibly important collaboration is really where so much of the value lies. All these different groups sharing their expertise and resources, all to benefit these little otters, is really an amazing thing to see.
It is an amazing, it takes a whole village for these efforts to come together, and really great to see these partnerships start to flourish. And I see a lot of great comments and questions coming in through the chat. We're going to get to those in just a minute here, so please keep them coming. I see some really interesting ones that I can't wait to share with you all. And before I get to that, one more question for Dr. Cara and Samantha. What can our audience members do to help sea otters?
Samantha, what do you have on the agenda for that?
Oh, there's just so many things. And I think one of the best ones is whenever you go to a coastal environment, or not, wherever you live, to pick up litter if you can, so that it doesn't end up into the ocean or eventually making its way there. And I think that would help sea otters a ton.
That's fantastic. Yeah, 100% agree. We absolutely do see them get caught in discarded fishing gear or different other, plastic or things like that. Another major thing to remember is sea otters need a lot of food, and they burn calories really, really fast, and they need a really good fur quality, and they need their rest. So we humans have a tendency to go towards them when we see their adorable little faces, like the one you can see on your screen right now. We want to approach them. We really kind of identify with them as a kind of charismatic species, but most importantly is to keep your distance from these otters. They really need their rest, and anytime we approach them, they're distracted. They need their rest, as you can see in that photo, and they need time to forage and do all of that effectively. Something we don't realize is they're really living on the edge all the time. So the more we interrupt their normal life cycles of sleep and rest and eating and caring for pups, the more damage we can do without ever realizing just how much we're impacting them. So keep your distance, absolutely enjoy them, but enjoy them from a distance. Use that zoom on your camera, and help them however you can. As Samantha said, like, mind your trash on the beach. Reducing what goes into the environment is helpful. If you see one that looks like it might be ill or injured, call our stranding hotline so that we can send out our trained responders and assess it a little bit better and see if it does look like there might be some problems that we need to help with that individual. But yeah, just appreciate these incredible animals' role in this environment, in the environment that we share and love.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much. Always really helpful to hear how anyone can get involved in this work. And as a reminder to continue lending your voice to all of these efforts, we have the survey pinned in the chat here, and we'll jump into questions. So I see first we've got Keith, who asked, with kelp deforestation in the Central Coast, how is the sea otter population doing?
That is a good question, Kara. Unless you want to take it, I'm happy to talk a little bit about that.
Go for it, Heather. Absolutely.
Yeah, because people always like to know, we are talking about historical sites, right? But sea otters are here, and they're in Central California, and there is a lot of conversation around kelp, and that even though there's a lot of it missing up in Northern California, there has been some kelp changes that are occurring in Central California, and those shifts and changes have happened. Overall, population's doing well. And so there is still a census that happens every year. We are part of it. You can also follow us and use the hashtag #EveryOtterCounts. That's another way to follow us and when we do that. But to answer the question of how they're doing is, at this point, we do understand that around, we know that they have that range where they're constrained, right? We've talked about Pigeon Point and down near Gaviota State Park. They have not been expanding past that. So you can get a sense that there happens to be areas where there's maybe prey limitation. There's areas where humans and sea otters overlap. And so that is something to be, aware of as we're talking about population, how that impacts them. Monterey Bay area has probably at carrying capacity at this point. And so we do see females with low body condition. There's end lactation syndrome. And so that brings questions of, again, prey limitability. Is there a lot of otters sort of vying for the same food sources? They do specialize, which is a very interesting way for them to be able to find more food and live, in higher populations. But overall, kelp and sea otters are still doing great in Central California. They still use them, use it, and you can see it resting in there. But yeah, I think that the population at this point is still similar to what it was previously, which is around 3,000 individuals.
Well, that is great to hear that we are sustaining that population. And Keith was also wondering, along a similar vein, when can we expect another sea otter census from USGS?
Yeah, great question. So Sea Otter Savvy was out in May. First week of May is when most all sea otter biologists go out, and we try to answer the question where sea otters are. And so everyone has to count every single sea otter, and that's a lot of work. So just everyone take a moment and think about all the sea otter biologists that go out and drive and hike, and even some of them fly to count all the sea otters off the coast. It's an amazing effort that is collaborative across many different organizations and agencies. And the update now is that there will be a report at the end of 2024. So end of this year, there will be a report for the 2024. I know there's been a missing reports in the past that a lot of that had to do with COVID, and you can get an understanding of when this many people have to go out, you have to be in small spaces. COVID hit more than just, us. It also hit the fact that with census became much more difficult to collect that information. But thank you for that question. And yes, the report will be coming out end of the year.
Thank you, Heather. That's so helpful just to get a sense of where we're at as far as that census. And I see another great question from Carrie around, do sea otters eat sea stars? We talked about their diet, their voracious eating habits. Dr. Cara or Samantha, would you like to jump in on that?
Sure, they do sometimes eat sea stars. They're probably far less nutritionally rich than some of their other preferred prey, like crab and clam and mussel. And of course, otters have a lot of prey preferences. Every otter learns what to eat kind of from its mom, and then sometimes depending on how it's doing, it might switch and find something that's more readily available, or if there is a shift in the ecosystem, they might adjust. So yes, sea stars can be part of their diet, but probably a little bit less common than many of the other food items they eat.
Makes sense. We talked about those picky diets. And I see Samantha, perhaps for you, Patricia asked, what are the top 3 potential sites for reintroducing sea otters? Maybe more ideal to choose remote places far from human population so there's not any interference.
So that's a great question. Patricia, I think you have the right idea here in that it might be preferable to want to reintroduce sea otters in the future in places where there might be minimal human disturbance. In my study that I conducted, we looked at a couple of sites just to see what reintroduction might potentially look like there. They're called Drake's Estera and Tamales Bay. They're a couple of estuaries located in Northern California and just about 50 miles west of San Francisco Bay. And they're actually protected spaces because they're part of Point Reyes National Seashore. So near San Francisco Bay, but doesn't have all that crazy anthropogenic disturbance that is typical of that large bay. So our study, by looking at those two study sites, said that we might be able to have 160 sea otters live there potentially one day were we to potentially reintroduce them, or if they were to spread there naturally, which could be really exciting for sea otter conservation here in California. But we've got quite a ways to go before we ultimately decide if reintroduction is appropriate at those study sites.
That's incredible to hear, Samantha. Thank you. And I see we're coming to the end of our questions from our audience members here. And so I'm curious, again, is there anything else that people can do to get involved to help sea otters? And that's for anyone to answer.
Yeah, I would say we love getting the support from all of you. We love getting information, and we love hearing more about protecting these sea otters. So if you want to help them, there's, as you can see just from those of us on this call, there's many ways you can adopt a sea otter through the Marine Mammal Center. You can donate to Sea Otter Savvy, the Marine Mammal Center, and other organizations that are working so hard to support healthy otter populations and take care of sick and injured ones. All of those contribute so much to being able to care for these animals, learn more about them, and figure out how we can protect their population and hopefully help expand it in the future.
And thank you, Kara. I just want to add too is awareness. You guys are taking the very first steps. You guys have come, joined, learned a little bit more about sea otters, and there are so many more events to come. So please, please, please join us, for there's so many more virtual events and live in-person things. So definitely check out the official website. It's at the Defender's website, but you can find it on ours. So I think Team MC as well. We can link it to you guys, but join some of the other ones and learn all the little pieces that you want to learn and spread that awareness. Thank you.
And I think to add to that too, there are things you can kind of do in your everyday life to help sea otters out, like trying to reduce your carbon footprint because climate change might impact sea otters, and picking up litter, and whenever you are in sea otter habitat, to be sure you give them their space that they need.
Incredible. And thank you all so much. We are about at time, and it was amazing to hear from your expertise and your experience about these amazing marine mammals. So truly, thank you all so much for jumping on. And I want to just say that thank you, especially to Heather and Sea Otter Savvy, for putting together an amazing lineup for Sea Otter Awareness Week. And thanks to our audience for all your great questions. Remember to take that survey. We've got it pinned in the comments for you so we can hear your voice and your thoughts on sea otter reintroduction. And join us for the next event later this week, actually later this evening at 6 p.m. We'll put the link for a schedule of events and that survey link into the comments. So we hope to see you join us again, and I hope everyone has an utterly awesome week.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.